Second speaker, writer and director, who was behind the film Scenes of a Sexual Nature, which featured Ewan McGregor, Mr. Ed Blum. Thank you.
So I'm burning up, I'm afraid, like everyone is. So I was only asked to do this a few minutes before, but so I do teach. So part of this is a thing which I teach at film school sometimes, and I think the original thing was someone was going to talk about crowdfunding. And I will move on to crowdfunding at the end, but because crowdfunding in some ways for filmmakers is a limited way of getting a film off the ground. And I'm going to lead on straight off, something like that, from that last speech, which was wonderful. So my career, so I worked in television for years, in television in BBC, Channel 4. And so what this is 10 minutes on how to see yourself as an entrepreneur and as a filmmaker. So it deals with the idea of pitching, but not necessarily just your project. It's pitching you as a mini business, as a producer, or as a director, or as a writer to get your project off the ground. And I will start, it's normally a longer thing, but I will start with the fact that I was at the BBC, absolutely had a really good job, management was calling, all of that, and I pulled the ripcord and decided to go off and do a low-budget film. And I'd already tried to get one film off the ground, which was £1 million, and no one was going to give me £1 million for my first film. And it was so what I decided to do was use all the assets that I had at my availability at that time. So what I did was devise 7 short stories, which meant that I could attract the actors. We only needed the actors for 2 days, which is fine if they're in the theatre in London. You can get them back for their call time. The maximum for all the actors was 3 days, so there were 7 short stories. And I decided to set it outside, which meant I didn't need to use any lighting, only a little bit of fill, which cut down costs. I decided to set it in Hampstead Heath, which meant I didn't have to build any sets, because we were just going to use the sets. And then when it came to the agents, it meant I could say that the actors would have to leave at 6, because a lot of first-time filmmakers film till 12, till 2, till 3, whenever, and just taking the mickey out of the cast and crew. And what I decided to do, because I knew no one in the film industry, and I recommend if anyone hasn't been to the Cannes Film Festival and want to get into the film industry, is you can actually do it really cheaply. Buy a flight way in advance, try to find some cheap accommodation or get on someone's sofa, get a load of business cards made, and just spend 3 or 4 days in Cannes. And this comes to the pitching, you will meet so many people that by the end of those 4 days, your pitch will be really good, because you'll be pitching left, right and centre. And my film career started by going down to the Cannes Film Festival. There was a competition called the Big Pitch Competition, and in fact what I decided to do was to pitch the previous film, the £1 million film, which I hadn't got off the ground because it was a straight narrative, because to pitch 7 short stories is really hard. There is nothing really to pitch, you can't pitch each story. And what I did was go from every single pitching event at Cannes, because I'd never pitched before, and I used every single pitch for the first week to practice how to pitch. So I went up to people, and Rain Dance was doing something, which again is a kind of organisation which probably a lot of you know, and they had a pitching competition. Well, it wasn't a competition, but you could pay a £5 and walk around and pitch to 2 executives. And there was a big queue, and I thought, these executives, unless you've got a real big pitch, they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart. It's very unlikely you're going to pitch something which they'll jump on. But for me, it was a fantastic opportunity, and I put 20 quid aside, just to go around 4 times. And instead of asking what my story was like, I just used it as a way of learning how to pitch. And I said, what did you think of the pitch? And they went, is it a comedy? And I went, yeah, it is a comedy. They said, it didn't make me laugh. So I went, join the queue again for another 5 minutes. The next time I got them really laughing. I got 4 or 5 laughs in 2 minutes. And they said, what's the story about? And I went, right, that's another £5. And I kept going back and back and back. And then there was a free pitching session somewhere else, and I practiced and whatever. And so we came to the actual, the kind of pitching competition the day before, where there was, originally there was 400, then we got down to 20. And in that 20, I got down to the last 12. Come on in. It's a 20 quid. Okay, all right. So we got to the pitching competition, and there was, I think there was 12 of us. And it was absolutely remarkable in the sense that some people had fantastic ideas, but they simply didn't, exactly what they were saying, didn't have the confidence to say, this is my story. And I was listening to some of the stories and I was thinking they're great. And by the time we got to the pitching competition, I knew that I was going to deliver 4 laughs. I knew I was going to get the story there. I knew that I was going to leave them on a hanging bit right at the end, and about 5 to 10 seconds before the final bell went. And touch wood, I won the competition. I got a load of, in fact it was sponsored by Cobra, so I got a year's supply of beer, which was great. And I tried to get my doctor to say he's an alcoholic to get some extra beer. And I got a load of cameras and courses. It was fantastic. But the main thing that happened with that was that I met producers and all those people, is that, and this is the beauty of Cannes, I got introduced to a producer, in fact, who's producing my next film, who then introduced me to a casting director. And I met this casting director, and again, you use all the assets you have, and I had no assets, I had no money, I was skint. So we met at BAFTA, I gave a huge box of chocolates. I said, listen, you know, just for coming and meeting me. And she had this list of actors for this film. And I was making this film, in the end the budget was 200,000, but I was making the film for 110,000 to get it to the Ken. And I had this crazy list. You know, Ewan McGregor, Hugh Bonneville, Mark Strong, and she had this crazy list, and it was almost the similar actors. And we both laughed, as you do. She probably had lists underneath of, like, you know, people just out of drama school, people who couldn't get into drama school, or people, you know, just off the streets, you know, who you met on the bus. But we had our A-lists, and and she was saying, when are you thinking of filming? And I said, oh, I'm thinking of filming it at the beginning of 1st of August. And she went, well, that's 6 weeks away. I went, yeah. And she went, well, that's crazy. That's just madness. It's a very good script, but it's going to take that amount of time to actually get the agents to read the script. And I went, well, I'm sure we'll come up with something. And she said, right, you just won a pitching competition, because I put that into the thing. She said, I want to see how well you pitch. I said, okay. So she phoned up an agent right there in the afternoon, Nicky Van Gelder, who's a big agent, and took me straight down to see Nicky. So we literally walked out of BAFTA, down into Nicky's office, and sat down, and Nicky's like, you know, who's this? And Emma, this is Emma Starr, who unfortunately tragically has passed away. But Emma was saying, this is Ed, and he'd like to pitch. And that was it. And I said, right, well, you know, and I talked just about the story that her client was going to be in, and I was talking a little bit about my background, and I'd, you know, done a short film, it got nominated for a BAFTA, so I'd had a bit of a background. And then I said, and we start filming on 1st of August. And it's low budget, at equity minimum, which means that all the actors are going to get paid exactly the same, it's pari passu, so there's no negotiations for the agent. Once one actor has said yes, all the actors would have to agree or not be in it. So the agent was thinking in her mind, great, it's equity minimum, which gives them assurance that they're definitely going to get paid because the money's got to go into escrow before. It's minimum, so I can't negotiate. Everyone's on the same rate, so that means, you know, once someone said yes, everyone says yes. So in her mind she's saying, well, that's simple. I was saying it's shot outside, so the actors, once the light goes down, boom, they're in a taxi home, we can't overshoot. It's in Hampstead, most actors live in North London. You know, it's suited. And I said, we're starting on the 1st of August, we're shooting for 18 days, and because you're the first person we've come to, any time in that period for your client would be fantastic. And she immediately went into her diary and went, oh yes, she's free for these 4 days here, so we'll work that out. I said, okay, great. And I walked out of the agency, and we were just around the corner, just out of earshot. Emma, big Jewish lady, fantastic. Oh my God, oh my God. I was like, what? I said, you don't believe what's just happened. And I said, I don't. And she said, they didn't ask you if it was funded. And I went, they said, because you've just given them dates for filming, they think it's funded. And they didn't ask you if it's financed. And I hadn't even thought about the funding. So Emma, being the kind of entrepreneurial casting director, went, that's it. And she immediately that afternoon then set up meetings with every single big agent. And we went through our list, and every single big agent, she got me into pitch. And I started getting really cocky. I was saying, no, it's really these dates, and we can't do this. That's it. And they're going, oh God, well, we might be able to squeeze in, you know. And it got to the extreme where, you know, we got Catherine Tate from the theatre, we got Douglas Hodge, who's a very brilliant actor, not that well known, but he was playing opposite Ewan McGregor. And we offered Douglas Hodge the part, and he wanted to do it because he doesn't get a lot of film, and he's in the theatre, and he can't do film. This is ideal. And we did mention to him that we're going to send it to Ewan, and obviously he mentioned it to Ewan McGregor. And then Ewan was like, well, why haven't they asked me? So the next day we asked him, and he read it, and he said yes. And then he had all sorts of problems with his scheduling, because he's just out of Star Wars. He's in this theatre, but he's a popular lad. And again, Emma just held fast and just said, no, these are the only dates. This is when we're filming. And he actually moved around his dates to suit our filming. So in terms of getting that cast together, first of all, it was the pitching down in Cannes, which served me very well. And then secondly, it was the ability to pitch in front of those agents. And then the third time on that project to get it up and going was actually pitching to investors. And each pitch is slightly different. The pitch to the actors' agents is to give them reassurance that their talent is going to be looked after, that you are a confident person, that they're not going to have the mickey taken out of them. The pitch, obviously, in Cannes was saying, hey, this is a great project, very much like Sasha, isn't it? Sasha was saying that, the passion, even if it's a competition, it's the passion of that, of what you want to make. And a pitch to the investor, again, is a very different pitch, but something which, if you're wanting to get your first film off the ground, is really important. And it also ties up with crowdfunding as well. And all the elements of pitching to an investor, there's certain key things. One is you've got to have obviously your budget sorted, and you've got to have as many assets in place in terms of hopefully cast, obviously a good script, but also, which is absolutely key, and I found it absolute key for the next film I'm doing, you've got to put yourself in the position of this investor, in the sense that film is an incredibly high-risk business to invest in. And most film investors, high net worths, and you can get a film off the ground by just meeting rich people and setting up what's called an SEIS. And if there's any producers in the room, or even directors, who are looking to get their first film off the ground, the one thing you've got to read up on is an incentive scheme called SEIS, because it allows a high net worth to put, say they put £20,000 into your film, they immediately get 10,000 back as income tax relief. And then if the film fails, they can put even more against income tax relief, so their risk goes down. So in terms of pitching to an investor, you've got to pitch the passion of the project, really short. You've got to pitch all the assets that you've managed to get to that point. But you've also got to pitch and be really entrepreneurial in terms of looking upon them as someone. That's okay. I didn't even hear it. Are you there? I'm at the back. You can't hear me, it's all right. So pitching to that investor is absolutely key, that you've got to not see them as people who are patrons of the arts, who are doing this out of generosity, and that is more Kickstarter in terms of going to your friends and family. But if you're looking to raise 150,000, which is a really good amount to make a first feature film these days, and you can get the crew and you can get some really good cast, and for a first film that is becoming one of the bog standard amounts, you can top it up with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but to raise 150 grand on Kickstarter is really, really hard. And in fact, if you look at the statistics for Kickstarter, most film projects that succeed are, I think it's between the 2,000 to 5,000. Yeah, ideal for development money. As soon as you go above 5,000, the actual statistics for a project not reaching that figure drop amazingly downward. And the same with Indiegogo as well. But you can always use those crowdfunding sites to top up what you've raised somewhere else, because it doesn't affect the actual business deal that you've done with high net worths. But if there is any courses or at any film schools on how to put a business plan together, you should go on it. Simply because of unless you are a writer and you're pitching and you want someone to make that film for you. But if you are a producer or if you're a director and you want to get your project off the ground, you've got to see yourself as an entrepreneur. You've got to put that business package together, and you've got to learn how to pitch to high net worths. You've got to go to networking groups, and you've got to deliver an idea which is of passion, and you've got to deliver a business plan which the high net worth knows that he'll probably lose money, but unless you pitch it in a business way, they won't take you seriously. But if you put that all together with a little bit of work and a little bit of time, and you put a little business plan together, there are lots of high net worths out there who are willing to put 5, 10, 15 grand into SEIS. And you only need 10 of those people. You've got 150 grand, and you've got enough to make your first feature film. And if you put a little bit aside in that budget to help you put it into one cinema, you've made a theatrical feature film. So leading on from there, you've got to see yourself as not just a filmmaker, but as an entrepreneur. And the pitching doesn't just stop. Unless you're looking for someone just to purely fund your project, the pitching doesn't just stop with the film. It goes right the way through until the film's in the cinema. There we go.
Can I ask?
Go on.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes, you can.
That was fascinating, actually, and especially for your first film, where you tapered off days, and you said you had 4 days that you were going to shoot outside.
It was all shot outside, yeah.
Were you not afraid of the weather? Being from Ireland, we just don't have weather.
Well, so there's two anecdotes about the weather. One is that we were going to shoot starting on Monday, because I just picked the 1st of August, and Gina McKee, who was in it, turned around and said, "Oh, Monday, I can't do Monday." So we went, the only day possible was to shoot on the Sunday. So we actually started in July, a day early, on this crazy, mad schedule. And on the Monday, which was a dead day, we were just, getting the rest of the, bits and bobs together, it absolutely poured down with rain. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that happened, which was really could have freaked the crew out and could have freaked me out, was that one of the actors at that point, again, this is how good Emma was. By this time we had about 4 days to go with this amazing cast, but we were insisting that we wanted one new actor, someone who was unknown, to be in this film, because it's my first film with all these actors, and you've got to give a chance to an unknown. And she said, hold out for this actor. He's really good, he's up and coming, he's great. I went, all right. And so anyway, he came along for an audition, and literally within 30 seconds of the audition I was going, me, he's got the part. And a minute later I was going, he's going to be a fucking superstar. And that was Tom Hardy. So I phoned up the agent and said, and he got 100. Ewan McGregor did it for £156 a day, exactly the same as Tom Hardy. And then so Tom was phenomenal. He just nailed it within 30 seconds. And I'd worked in the theatre, so I could you just see an actor and you just go, wow, this guy's just, And I gave him a few notes and he did it completely differently. I thought, wow, it's not just him. This guy is just phenomenal. And we had 2 days to film his scene. He was working with Telco.Trader, who'd just been nominated for an Oscar. And he was, he was quite nervous and whatever. And on the first day, it was completely rained out. So we couldn't get we couldn't turn over. We were shooting on film. We couldn't turn over a single frame. So we had 1 day, because he was off to shave his head the day afterwards for Sweeney Todd. So 1 day to do 13 minutes of screen time. And the night before, we phoned up someone else and we said, listen, can you bring in another camera? And I'd never really worked with 2 cameras before. And this is David Meadows, who's a cameraman we both know. So I basically went, well, this is just going to be filmed theatre. Yeah, we've still got to get the angles and whatever. And we shot 13 minutes of screen time. And you can't, within the film, you can't really tell. And the 2 actors, I just said to them, we're going to shoot it as much in sequence as we can. You just got to treat it as theatre. And they just went for it. So they literally, sometimes they were trying to make a break to get a coffee, And I was like, no, we're ready to go again. Because we didn't have any lights because it's outside. It was 16 mil, which is really quick, much quicker than digital sometimes in setting up. And Dave's very quick, the focus puller was really quick, and we just went. And in fact, we added another little scene on right at the end, just as the sun was setting, which is right at the end of the film, in between the credits, where Tom Hardy's just sitting on a bench, because he's tried to chat up everybody in this park and has just failed completely. And he's just sitting on the bench, and he's had this run-in with a dog halfway through the film. And he's sitting on this bench feeling really alone for himself, and the dog kind of jumps up and sits next to him, and he says, "Yeah, I love you as well." And that's the end of the film, and that was actually bolted on. We shot that right at the end, and if you notice, some of his jewellery's off, because we were actually kind of getting him ready to go, and then we suddenly had this last-minute idea, and we just got him on the bench and just shot it, and put a tennis ball in his behind his collar, which this dog loved, this tennis ball. And all the dog is trying to do is get this tennis ball out, and it looks as though he's kissing Tom Hardy. And that was just improvised at the end. Yes, I didn't, if I'd thought about all the things that could have gone wrong, I just thought that once I'd got, so in terms of weather, once I'd got that cast, this was in the back of my mind, I was thinking, we might be able to manipulate a bit here, manipulate a bit there, but as long as I got 4/5 it in, I was pretty certain that at some point I might be able to squeeze one of those actors or a couple of those actors back if we really needed it. But we didn't do any pickups. We got it all in. We did some general GBs of the park, and that was it. But it was easier for the actors because it's very dialogue driven. So once I covered that dialogue, I knew I could cut it together. That's it.
What does SEIS stand for? How do you contact them?
Well, SEIS, there's no organisation. It's basically, it's called, so there was a thing called Enterprise Investment Scheme. So this is the Small Enterprise Investment Scheme. Seed, sorry, you're right, seed, sorry. And it's not an organisation, although there is, it's basically run by the government, and there's all the accountants know about it. And this is another hint. What I did with Scenes of a Sexual Nature was that I didn't have any money to get advice from an accountant. I shouldn't be telling you this, but okay, this is, if you want to learn about SEIS, what I did was basically draw up a list of the 6 main film accountants. I shouldn't be saying this, because you're all going to do it and they'll get really messed up. And I went, which one do I really want to work with? Yeah, and which one I don't really want to work with. So the one I didn't want to work with, I set up the first meeting with. And they will always give you an hour to try to get your film up and to talk to you, even if it's half an hour. So I went and talked to that one first, yeah, and then I phoned up the second one and went and talked to them and used the information I got in the first one to build a little bit more. And then I went to the third one, and then the fourth one, and the fifth one. And by the time I got to the sixth one, which was Shipley's, the bloke went, "Have you got an accountancy background?" And I went, "No." So I'd had 6 hours of being told about how I should set this film up. It wasn't, in those days, there wasn't SEIS. What? I did a little bit of sale and lease back, but the budget wasn't huge. It would have worked much better if the budget was huge. So the best thing to do is just to phone up an accountancy firm, yeah, and just say, "Listen, I'd love to come in for a meeting." And even if you meet one of their junior people, you'll probably still get 45 minutes with them, and you can ask about SEIS, and they will just talk you through it. But there's loads on the internet about it as well, and you can talk it through. The government talks about it. So it's not an organisation, it is just simply the way that you set up your company has to be set up in a specific way, and you do need an accountancy firm to issue the shares. So it's not something you can just do yourself. But if you do find that accountancy firm to do it, and it's much easier than EIS.